that little message for you. So my name is Allison Wright. I'm the president of the Maui Association of Landscape Professionals. We're excited to have you here. We try to hold these talks throughout the year and to make sure that we're able to pass all this knowledge on to our members and our communities. So as we're doing a little bit of business here. Sorry about that. So anyway, so we're really excited. So we try to have these talks throughout the year. And this one is particularly good for people because we have not only ISA CEUs, but we also have the restricted use pesticide CEUs. And so if you have any questions about that, like we said, make sure you stay on the call or on the Zoom meeting. So we'll be able to get your ISA CEUs for you. Make sure you send us your certification numbers if you're an ISA. For the restricted use pesticides, we'll be sending you all a quiz at the end of this. And so we'll have a link to that. And we'll also have, for the quiz, we'll be putting on there, we'll be sending it to you through email. So you have to be able to send us that email back, and then we'll be turning in your information, including with your license number. So we'll be able to check you in that way. So if anybody has any questions about that, please type it in the chat for us. Like I said, at the end, we're going to be doing questions at the end of the meeting. So as long as no one has any questions to start with, we'll go ahead and we'll introduce Hannah Lutgen. So Hannah is the current junior extension agent for CTAHR on Maui. That's through Maui College. And she runs both the floriculture and the landscape portion of the extension office over here on Maui. And so today she's going to be talking about ornamental plant diseases, and she's been doing studies on plant diseases for both horticulture and floriculture. So she's the person to talk to if you have any questions on these issues. So let's go ahead and introduce Hannah. So Hannah, I don't know if you have anything else to say, or if you want to just go ahead and start your talk.
Thank you so much, Allison, for the introduction. And thank you everyone for joining in today. Just gonna share my screen. Okay, can you folks see my screen, my presentation? Yeah? All right. Okay, well, thanks again, everyone, for being here. My name is Hannah Lutgen. I am a junior extension agent for the University of Hawaiʻi, Mānoa, and I am based here in Maui County. However, I do provide services and help all landscape professionals and cut flower growers and nursery growers as well on all islands. So today it's my pleasure to be here and talk to you about plant diseases. And first, I just wanted to ask you folks what you think a plant disease is. It's basically a biotic, so a living factor. So it can be an infectious pathogen such as a virus, bacteria, fungi, or nematode that infects a plant, or an abiotic factor agent, which could be the weather. It could be chemicals, that could be air pollution that disrupts normal plant function. So if the plant can't properly photosynthesize or flower, it's not growing correctly, that is considered a plant disease. And it's really important to understand the disease triangle. So in that, for a plant disease to occur, you always need a plant, right? A susceptible host plant, and then a pathogen. So again, this could be a virus, bacteria, fungi, phytoplasma, or nematode that's infecting the plant. And the environment is critical. So usually you need to have like a favorable environment, whether it's moist and warm. Typically, for the disease to occur, you need all three components. And the good thing about this is if you study the disease triangle and understand that you need all three for disease to occur, if you can focus on eliminating or controlling an environment, for instance, ponding water, wet soil, that could potentially help reduce disease and prevent it from the first place. Oh. Can you folks still see my screen? Yeah. All right. So I just wanted to briefly review the different type of plant pathogens. So there's bacteria, which is a single cell organism. It's very simple. And these organisms spread typically by rain or stormy weather, splashing water, and they can cause these. A typical symptom of bacterial infections are water-soaked lesions. So this is a pannix infected with Xanthomonas. So sometimes I'm sure you folks have all seen this, but bacterial diseases are really that water-soaked kind of wet-looking lesion. That's a common symptom for bacterial diseases. Fungi, which we'll be talking about today, are multicellular organisms with a very complex life cycle. They're composed of hyphae, which kind of looks like branched, like a somewhat like root-like branch. And mycelium is a complex of hyphae that moves throughout the soil or a plant, and they reproduce by spores. So they release spores, some which are microscopic, and that can infect the plant directly, or it can enter through wounds. So symptoms of fungi can be anthracnose, leaf spots, root or stem rots, blights, and cankers.
So it looks like somehow we lost Hannah temporarily. So we'll figure out what is going on there. So meanwhile, while we're waiting for her to come back in here, I'm not sure what happened there. So I think Hannah is, so if anybody can't hear me telling you that. So Hannah is temporarily gone from our meeting. We're not sure why. However, so while you all are here, let me know if you have any questions. I think if anybody new in here is, so Hannah's coming back. I can see her in the waiting room now. So anyway, so if you have any questions, let us know. Don't forget to put your ISA certifications into the chat so I can get your number. We'll be working on getting her right back because you never know what happens sometimes on Zoom. Don't forget to tell us where you're joining us from too. There she is. Let's see if she is on there.
Hey, sorry about that, guys. Ladies and gents, let me share my screen again. Never know what Zoom's gonna do sometimes, folks, but you know, hey, we've all learned to go with the flow of Zoom. And we appreciate your patience. I see a couple people on here I know. Allison, can you give me permission to share my screen?
I just did, so it should be coming up in a second. So I just gave you full host permission. So.
Can you see my presentation?
I can see it.
All right. Sorry about that, folks.
I never know what happens these days. That's okay. Hey, apparently there's a really big bill that's gonna get us all high-speed internet maybe, so we'll figure that out.
Oh, good.
So, we heard you
All
talking
right.
about the basics of the nematodes. Well, we know you're talking about fungi, and then you're starting about
Mhm.
nematodes, yeah?
Yes, so fungi, as you can see in this picture, they're composed of hyphae with chitin cell walls, and the massive hyphae is mycelium, and this is the vegetative part of a fungus. And they reproduce by producing spores. Not all fungi are equal, so not all of them produce what we know as mushrooms. There's a lot of other plant pathogenic fungi that just mainly reproduce by spores and don't have a fruiting structure, or it's too small to see with the naked eye. But today we'll be focusing on fungi. Nematodes are very small worms that live in the soil, and they have small stylet, almost like straw-like mouth parts that they inject into roots and or foliage and start feeding on nutrients. So symptoms of nematodes, if you pull out your plant, if you see a mass of galls on your roots, as in pictured up here, this is a tomato with root knot nematodes. That could be an indicator of nematodes. You can also see sometimes just a reduced plant yield. If you're not seeing any other symptoms of disease, you could have a nematode issue. Viruses are another plant pathogen, so they're very interesting. Viruses also affect humans, but they're a particle, a small piece of RNA or DNA with a protein coat that basically hijack the host plant, and they induce the formation of more virus particles. They're just trying to reproduce and basically trick the machinery of the plant. So common symptoms of viruses you'll see here is a red ginger disease virus. You can see mottling, streaking, and kind of a mosaic pattern is indicative of viruses. Okay, so why are diseases in Hawaii important? Well, fungal diseases are the most common diseases, more so than bacteria or viruses. And here in Hawaii, in Florida, they contribute to 70 to 85% of all plant disease. So that's pretty big. And why should we care about plant disease? Well, because it's expensive, right? Fungicides are expensive, and it can cost a lot of time, which is money and your hard labor and work. So it's very important. The first step in any disease management program is to properly identify what plant pathogen you're dealing with so you can make informed decisions and treat that accordingly. Okay, before we go into the fun stuff today, I just wanted to briefly talk about integrated pest management, which is basically the combination of different methods. So you have cultural methods, so disease pruning, cleaning your pruners or your chainsaw. You have biological, so encouraging beneficial bacteria and fungi. There's also predatory and parasitic beneficial bacteria, fungi, and nematodes in healthy soils, especially by encouraging a healthy soil food web. And then you also have chemical controls, right? So fungicides, pesticides are in the chemical branch. And by looking at your plant disease, once you figure out what issue you have, maybe it's Phytophthora or Rhizoctonia, you can use a combination of these methods to help you reduce the plant disease and even prevent it from the get-go. So integrated pest management is a great technique that really helps you keep your plants healthy in the long term by thinking about different options to reduce resistance. So today I'm very excited to talk about landscape fungal pathogens that I have identified working with some of you on this phone call today. And I just wanted to quickly touch base that not all fungi are evil. Today, I will be focusing on the naughty fungal pathogens, but there are many beneficial fungi and bacteria in the soil that we need to help convert nutrients into plant available forms. So not all fungi are evil. We just have to focus and learn about the disease-causing organisms. So first, I just wanted to talk about coconut and palm diseases. Here in Hawaii, there's two major fungal issues. There's Cieloviopsis paradoxa and also Phytophthora Palmovora. So I'll start. Phytophthora Palmovora is a fungal pathogen that affects coconuts. So this, most commonly, I've seen it on the windward or wet sides of the islands. It spreads by splashing rain. The spores spread by wind or rainy weather, even storms. And what's really cool about this is that the fungus produces these zoospores, so it produces sexual and asexual spores, some of which can germinate, can land on your coconut and germinate directly into the plant and infect host tissues. And what's an important symptom of this fungal pathogen, Phytophthora, is that the youngest leaf will turn brown and kind of hang upside or hang down, and it will quickly turn brown and dead. And with under severe infections, you'll have all the lower young leaves will just fall, and you'll have a very bare, skinny canopy remaining. So that's a common symptom of Phytophthora. It can also infect the crown. The whole crown can come off, can randomly drop off. You can see it affects the nuts. Sometimes you'll see a bunch of coconuts falling, which could be a safety hazard. So that could be an indicator of Phytophthora. And also under severe infections, once you chop down the tree, you can see actually this internal dark staining of the vascular system. So these are all symptoms of Phytophthora. And it's really important to manage this pathogen by, if you see this at your farm or at your landscaping property, it's really important to remove that coconut right away, because this Phytophthora will start producing spores and can reinfect this coconut and several other coconuts throughout the year. So it's really important to remove that diseased plant material and possibly consider chopping the whole thing down so it doesn't spread to your healthy plants. In addition, you can also apply a preventative fungicide such as phosphorus acid as a root drench around the base, just as a preventative measure, especially if you're going into the winter, it's really windy and you're concerned that you could get a Phytophthora infection. I would highly recommend that. If you have any questions, feel free to enter in the chat. So moving on, another important fungal plant pathogen that affects palms is Cieloviopsis, also known as Ceratocystis paradoxa. So this is a very interesting fungal pathogen. This affects all palms. It can affect coconuts and all monocots. And it's actually a fungal pathogen that prefers the non-lignified or semi-lignified tissue. Although sometimes you can see it rotting the stem or the base of the stem, the basal stem, it does prefer to slowly move up to like the upper third part of the trunk and the canopy. Then it slowly starts to degrade the tissues inside and can lead to a sudden trunk and canopy collapse. Other symptoms of this you can actually see on coconuts and other species of palms, this stem bleeding, which is a good indicator or symptom. So it's literally once you wound the coconut, that these Cieloviopsis spores that are living in the soil, both asexual and sexual, can enter into the wound and slowly start to degrade the tissue. So if you see a wound surrounded by black staining, that can be indicative of this. Also, what's really important to notice is that this pathogen, this is a good thing to me, in my opinion, it only infects fresh wounds. So if you don't wound your tree, the likelihood of the infection will be lower. However, if you do use spikes or wound your tree, just be aware that you could have a potential infection and you might want to consider applying a preventative fungicide such as mancozeb or Cleary's to that wound to prevent any fungal infections from occurring. Okay, so Rhizoctonia is another common fungal pathogen. This is a soil-borne pathogen, so it's mostly found in the soil. And just like Pythium, Rhizoctonia and Pythium thrive in wet soil, poorly drained environments. So a lot of fungal species do like moisture and warm temperatures. So this fungal pathogen mainly attacks the roots, and it can cause a lot of root rots. Sometimes you'll see dampening off in the nursery. So this is a picture of a potato. You can kind of see this infected root rot occurring. That's due to Rhizoctonia. Over here on the upper right is actually a carnation infected with Rhizoctonia solani. Sometimes it can cause symptoms and affect the leaves as well. It's not always a root issue, but it is a soil-borne pathogen. I've also seen it on Hemographis and Bacopa, as well as anthuriums. So important management technique for this is to just increase soil drainage. Maybe monitor your irrigation, reduce your irrigation. You want good drainage and oxygen so you don't have your roots saturated with moisture all the time. Okay, moving on. Pythium is another fungal species commonly found in the soil. Similar to Rhizoctonia, it can cause root rot, and it is potentially opportunistic. It doesn't, what that means is that it could be in the soil, but if your plant is very healthy, it may not infect your plant. It is opportunistic in that if your plant is stressed, it may infect your plant and slowly start causing disease. This is actually a picture of Pythium on hydrangea that was growing up in Kula. And again, a management technique is to just increase drainage in your soil by adding mulch or green waste, compost, and keeping your plants healthy. And allowing your plants to dry out in between waterings. Moving on, I wanted to just briefly touch base on native plant diseases. So there is Phomaltus, which is pictured, this is a koa on the upper pictures are both koas infected with Phomaltus. Fusarium wilt is another fungal pathogen I'll be talking about later that affects koa. It can cause this wilting. It can actually cause an internal wood staining of the vascular system, and the entire canopy will quickly wilt, turn brown, and die. It is important to notice koas that are growing in elevations less than 2,500 feet and young koa trees are more susceptible to Fusarium wilt compared to koas growing at higher elevations and more mature koas. But it is important to monitor your native plants. And if you start to see dieback, take pictures and contact your local extension agents and possibly consider applying preventative fungicides before it gets to this point and the plant dies and you lose your beautiful koa. Phomopsis is another wound pathogen that I've seen in ohia. I'll be talking about that later on as well, but it can cause in severe infections. The same thing, it can actually go colonize the vascular system and the intercellular spaces of the cells and cause this vascular wilting. ROD, I'm sure you are all aware of ROD, rapid ohia death, which is ceratocystis. So there's two different strains of ceratocystis. There's leuco-ohia and ceratocystis huliohia, which are both found in Hawaii and Kauai. And just ceratocystis leuco-ohia is actually a more aggressive strain. So that one we have to be really careful about moving ohia between the islands. The less aggressive species, ceratocystis huliohia, was detected on Maui and Oahu, but I believe it's been contained on Maui. Symptoms of ROD include yellowish crowns and a rapid death. You can also see presence of dark staining once you cut down the ohia and a radial staining in the outer xylem of the cut trunk. There's also an alpaca cucumber mosaic virus. I'm sure many of you folks have seen that along the shoreline or wherever you are. Basically, the symptoms include this like mottling. It almost looks on the lower side of the leaf like a fungus. However, this is a virus which can be difficult to control, but some landscapers are actually pruning out the disease material, and that seems to be helping. All right, moving on, I just wanted to briefly talk about a turfgrass disease. So take all root rot, Manomyces graminis is an important fungal pathogen that affects warm season turf, Bermuda grass. You can commonly see this in Bermuda grass. So this fungal pathogen favors high rainfall and moisture in stressed plants, and it attacks the roots. It does not attack the blades. Although this is a symptom, you'll see this irregular yellow to browning patches. The fungus is actually attacking the roots and the rhizomes and the stolons. And you can, if you can take some of your turf grass, pull it out, and then look at the roots, you might see very thin off-white roots, or if you look very closely, you might see these black lesions or looks rotted. So this could be indicative of this fungal pathogen affecting turf grass. And it's triggered by high rainfall and plant stress. So one important management technique for take all root rot is to really keep your plants healthy, apply slow release fertilizer and micronutrients, especially manganese and zinc. That really helps boost plant immunity. And also, if you're going into the rainy season, you may want to raise your mower height slightly. I know it's an issue because you have to maintain your turf and it has to be nice, but if you can just raise your mower height a small amount, that really may help reduce the disease. Okay, moving on, I'd like to talk about ornamental and floriculture pests. So Neoflucicam is a member of the Botrytis family, and it exists typically as an endophyte, which means it's living inside the plant. So typical symptoms, you'll see these black lesions on the stems. You may see leaf spots with a dark and pinpoint tan center. And also, again, if you cut it open, if you have a branch, if you see a branch dieback like this, and you cut this open, you may see this dark stained pith or vascular center. This could be indicative of Neoflucicam. And what's interesting about this fungal pathogen is it's not always a pathogen. It could be living inside your healthy plant right now. It's just when your plant is under stress, then this Neoflucicam pathogen can actually attack and start causing disease and symptoms in the plant. So Neoflucicam produces spores that are airborne. They can spread through splashing rain and water, and also diseased plant material. So it's really important if you see any fungal symptoms like this, that you monitor it and prune it out. And actually, I would recommend removing it off site, bagging it and removing it. I wouldn't recommend composting at this point because it's difficult sometimes to kill some of these pathogenic spores unless you have a dialed in composting operation with a temperature gauge, which you can easily get that. But that's something I'd recommend is removing diseased plant material from the field. You can also do sanitation and disease pruning, followed just any kind of crossing branches, prune them out so you're increasing airflow, keeping that plant healthy. You could follow that up with a preventative fungicide application. Other fungicides that may help are pyroclostrobin, metroam, and also some biofungicides. So Saccharata is another fungal pathogen. So the interesting major symptom that we've noticed is this actually, you see this V right here? I'm not sure if you folks can see my cursor, but on the leaves itself, there's this distinct thick black line between like the grayish, tan, brown, and then the healthy. So that's kind of an indicative symptom of Saccharata. This is also a fungi that can cause this leaf tip necrosis. It has multiple hosts, mainly ornamental and woody plants. And other management techniques, again, are keeping that plant healthy, boosting plant nutrition, mulching, composting, encouraging those beneficial bacteria and fungi. And there's also preventative fungicide applications. If you're going into a rainy, humid weather that's also warm, you may want to consider applying that. Okay, so Alternaria is another common fungal pathogen. It has a very wide host range, and it can cause these grayish leaf spots. And this is actually a protea, so a Leucospermum. And it's a facultative parasite, meaning it does not depend on the host. It can be free living and living in the soil as a saprophyte, which means it's just degrading or decomposing organic matter. It's not necessarily causing disease. It can spread, the spores again can spread by the wind, diseased crop plant material. And a sudden drop in humidity can actually trigger some of the asexual spores to fall and reinfect your plants. Here's the other pictures. This is again Leucospermum or pincushion growing up in Kula. You can see this gray spot. So this is Alternaria. It's on several other plant hosts as well, including edible crops. But if you ever see this, give me a call or let me know. Other management techniques are sanitation, so removing plant debris, increasing airflow, and fungicides such as copper sulfate or Bacillus subtilis, which is a biofungicide. Fusarium. So Fusarium, this is an indicative symptom of Fusarium wilt. This is just a genus of soil-borne bacteria. Not all of them are pathogenic, but Fusarium oxysporum can cause a wilt on koa. It's also soil-borne. Typically, Fusarium is soil-borne and infects the roots first. So it affects the roots, it enters through the roots, and then it slowly migrates up the plant and can block the vascular tissue, basically blocking water flow. So the entire plant will start to wilt and look like this poor protea plant. It is important to notice that for koa wilt, there's a black twig borer and ambrosia beetle that can actually transmit Fusarium solani. So you may want, if you see a black twig borer ambrosia beetle, be aware of that. Maybe you want to think about managing that insect because it could potentially be spreading this disease. Other symptoms, if you were to cut this open, you could see wood staining, rapid death, Cieloviopsis is a fungal pathogen that can cause these stem cankers, as you see right here, or lesions. It can cause leaf spots on eucalyptus, protea, mango, strawberry. It spreads through diseased plant material, and actually in the mainland, blackberry is an alternative host. So it could be growing in blackberry and then spreading to your desirable plants. So you may want to consider managing blackberry if that's something you have at your farm or landscape. Again, other management techniques are disease pruning, sanitation, fungicide applications, such as mancozeb, chlorothalonil, myclobutanol, and pyraclostrobin. Phomaltus is another stem canker causing, here we go. It can cause stem cankers, fruit rot, brown lesions, and I have observed Phomaltus on koa and ohia, protea, papaya, and woody plants. It has a wide host range, and actually under severe infections, the fungal hyphae, again, that root-like structure composed of chitin, can actually colonize and invade the vascular system, causing wilt. So that's something to observe. If you see an ohia and it has a sudden rapid death, it could be Phomaltus, but there is someone very important here in Maui, and you can always contact your local extension agents or HDOA if you're concerned about rapid ohia death. Phomaltus is spread by splashing rain and leaf wetness. It is also can be considered an intermediate virulent pathogen. You could have it growing. This is a picture of Phomaltus growing on a protea plant. And besides this lesion right here, the plant is doing okay. It's still surviving. You could prune this out. So you could actually take your clippers, spray it with alcohol, please, to sanitize it, and prune back to the healthy tissue. But in severe cases, so severe infections, this fungal pathogen can continue to spread and block the vascular system, causing wilt. So I would improve soil drainage and maintain plant nutrition to try to prevent this pathogen from affecting your plant. And also you can use drench applications of strobilurin fungicide. Lazio diploidia is another fungal pathogen. So I've observed this on oleander, tea, so Camellia sinensis, and papaya. And it can cause like these leaf spots, these very dark leaf spots, as well as these diebacks you can see on this oleander, and wilts. So management, again, is to keep your plants healthy, apply proper nutrition, clean your pruners. I do believe it can spread through mechanical wounding. So please keep your pruners clean and sterilized. And also you can consider using fungicides, preventative applications, such as mancozeb or thiophanate methyl. Okay, Colaototriceum species. This is another fungal pathogen. So symptoms include like this anthracnose. So this dying tissue, I'm sure you folks have seen this on papaya or mango. It can also cause these black or brown lesions, blight, and dark necrotic or angular areas on leaves. So it exists as an endophyte, again, living inside a plant, or a phytopathogen, which means it's a fungi that actually secretes proteins that can interact with the host plant during infection. And these effector proteins actually can affect the host cell's function. So it's actually parasitic, and it secretes these enzymes that affects the normal host plant function. Management, this disease does prefer warm and wet temperatures like most fungal diseases. And cultural, so disease pruning, improving plant health, planting, utilizing disease-resistant material is important. And also there's other fungicides you can use as preventative measures. It's very important, no matter what fungicide you use, to keep good records, as you know, and rotate that FRAC code or active ingredient so you reduce resistance of that fungal pathogen. So in summary, disease management is important so you can really save money, save time, and keep your plants healthy. We're all on this call today because we clearly love and enjoy plants. So if we can monitor our plants, look for these disease symptoms that I shared with you today, and then make sure to get it accurately identified. From there, we can take a series of steps. The first and foremost is prevention by keeping your tools clean. So I know life is short, but if you have access to rubbing alcohol or other chemical disinfectants, I highly recommend having that with you at all times, and sanitizing your pruners before you move, even between cuts, or before you move from, especially when you move from a diseased plant to a healthy plant. Cultural tactics of disease management would include pruning, so planting disease-resistant stock, grafting healthy plants onto resistant rootstock, chemical control. So there are many fungicides available and amendments. There's also biofungicides, which kind of can go in both categories. Biological would be biocontrol agents. There's a lot of predatory, parasitic fungi and bacteria that can help you. So by mulching or composting and correctly amending your plants, you could be encouraging those healthy, beneficial bacteria and fungi that are already in the soil. And physical and mechanical is, again, to please clean and sanitize your equipment, because once you have an issue, once you see your plants are expressing these symptoms, sometimes it's almost too late to save them. And I do want to stress the importance of fungicides. So they can be a great tool, but they are best as a prophylactic or preventative measure. So if you're seeing slight symptoms, you may want to consider applying fungicides, but they don't always cure all. There's no cure all. Sometimes it can help, but it's important to apply it preventatively before the plant is, I would say, more than 50% diseased. Also, when using fungicides, please make sure to correctly follow the label. The label is the law, and make sure to rotate your FRAC code and mode of action to help delay fungicide resistance. So many of you folks may be wondering, how do I identify which disease I have? There's clearly 70% of plant disease is caused by fungal pathogens, and we have a wide variety of different fungal genera. So it is important to sample and contact your local extension agent. Please take pictures, record your symptoms, and even collect plant and soil samples. and contact myself, or there's Russell Galanti on Big Island in Oahu and James Keach on Kauai. And lastly, I briefly just wanted to share a project that I'm working on. I'm really excited to tell you folks about. So right now I'm working on a potted plant fungicide trial to predict the field efficacy of fungicides to help growers manage disease. So I'm going to jump to this slide. We're actually using Pageant, Eagle, and Triathlon, which is a biofungicide, and spraying them on disease protea, so king protea and Leucospermum pincushion plants to try to see which fungicides can help reduce disease symptoms and improve plant health, so we can help growers correctly manage and develop a fungicide protocol program to save their plants, increase yield, and still have marketable plant material. So please stay tuned if you're interested in that. I will be sharing the results hopefully in a few months. And at this time, I'd like to open it up to any questions.
So Hannah, there was a question from a while ago about coconut diseases. And I think it was the Phytophthora you were talking about. Does it only affect coconuts or other palm trees too?
That's a great question. Phytophthora can affect all palm trees. There's several different species of Phytophthora. It's a big disease. There's Phytophthora Palmovora. There, I think, is Phytophthora cylindricladium. Some of them are being renamed, so excuse me if that was incorrect. But yes, there's several different Phytophthora. It's a major fungal pathogen that affects edible and ornamental and landscaping plants.
Here's another question from Richard. It says, do ants spread fungal pathogens in landscape plants?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Sorry, it says, do ants spread fungal diseases in landscape plants?
Great question. So ants, if you see ants, that's usually indicative of multiple things going on. So if you see ants, I would look closely on your plants and look for aphids or scales or mealybugs, because those insects actually produce their waste. Basically, their poop is honeydew. It's a sugary substance that the ants feed on. And in return, the ants protect those hemipteran insects, so they will protect those insects. Sometimes if you touch the plant, you'll have all these ants come and attack you or crawl on your finger because they're trying to protect those insects. So the scales, mealybugs, aphids. And if you have a large infection or presence of those insects, you can sometimes see sooty mold, which is a fungus. So usually you can see three things: the ants, the insects, and the sooty mold, which is a fungus that just kind of feeds off that honeydew excrement. Did that answer your question? That's a great question. Any other questions?
Yeah, there's another question, and it says, do we have access to these slides in the future? We are recording this, so it's possible we can post this online. And then we'll put a website on there. And then here's another one that says, I do believe aphids are vectors for viruses, so ants may be an indicator for aphids. That's true. What do you think about that?
Hannah, we can't hear you.
No, looks like we can't hear her. Well, Hannah's on there. We'll see. So
can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes, we can hear you again.
Yes.
So it's talking about aphids, and it says, I do believe though aphids vector viruses, so ants may be an indicator for aphids. So yes, that's actually true.
Yes.
And also farm aphids for their honeydew.
Yes, absolutely. Aphids. So several different insects can vector viruses. Aphids can vector viruses. So for instance, banana bunchy top is vectored through banana aphids. There are several other aphids and mealybugs that can vector even ornamental red ginger viruses. So yes, there can be insects that vector fungal diseases as well that can transmit it. So if you see an ant, I would be suspicious. Is there something else going on? Maybe take an action and try to control those ants and other insects. Great question and comment. I see one other question. It appears Nene Leua is suffering from a rust-looking fungus. Any ideas on treatment? Great question, Chris. Please email me. I'll put my email in the chat. I'd love to take a picture of that. Close-up pictures are great. If it is a rust-looking fungus, if it's new, it's important to identify it and go from there. There's also several different, on the bottom side of leaves, you can see algae leaf spots that almost look like a fungus, almost fuzzy light, kind of cream to brown colored. Sometimes you'll see it on magnolias. That's actually an algae leaf spot, which shouldn't cause too much disease. But again, another thing you could do is just to prune or remove those leaves. That should help. Yes, but please, if you folks have any questions, please email me. I see another question. Is there a fungicide to be a preventative measure instead of waiting for symptoms appearing? Yes, great question. There are several different fungicide products out there. It really, again, depends first on what fungal pathogens you think you're dealing with. Most fungicides work better as a preventative measure. So if you're going into a very stressful like drought or wet period, when you know your plants are going to be stressed and more susceptible to some of these endophytes, these fungi living inside the plants, I would use a preventative fungicide. There's also systemic fungicides that are great products too. You can still use those after the onset of symptoms and they can be helpful, but they're not always 100% curable. Did that answer your question?
So I just put in the chat to everyone Hannah's email address. So if you can email her, and if you're not if you're on a different island, like she said, there's also Russell Galanti and there's also James. I was trying to think of his name, like Brandon. No, it's James Keach on Kauai can help you.
I'm going to put my name in the chat. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. If you have any questions, please contact me. I think I saw one more question. Let's see here. What about new products? That's a great question, Sarah, but I'm curious as to what you mean. Are you asking about new products out there on the market or new products for any of the pathogens we talked about today? Just let me know. There's a lot of actually new biofungicide products. So triathlon, products that use beneficial bacteria or predatory bacteria and fungi are kind of gaining popularity. It's more of a preventative approach again than systemic, but there are a lot of cool new products out there. Oh, natural homemade blends. Neem can be a great product. Yes, Neem has some antibacterial attributes to it. You could use Neem. I think Neem would be a great product there. Oh, there are a lot of actual botanical oils, so rosemary, those kind of things. I think maybe sage that are being tested, and they are available. Sometimes they're known as like botanical blends. And actually, I think people can even use those for insect issues too. So scales or mealybugs. But there's, yeah, a lot of different products out there. If you're curious about anything, just give me an email.
I think you also have to know, so make sure when you're looking for neem, there are different types of neem oil. So make sure you're reading the label. And most people don't realize there's more than one type of neem oil.
Mm-hmm. And you can grow neem trees here in Hawaii, which is cool.
And neem is still a chemical, so don't think it's not a chemical. So you still have to follow the label.
Yes, thank you, Allison. Just because it's organic or natural doesn't mean there's adverse effects to your health. Some products out there can actually cause skin irritation or can hurt your lungs. So please follow the label. I think I saw one more question. What about an illustrated atlas of Hawaiian plant pathogens? Bill, that's a great question. There are a lot of sources out there. I can happy to email the slides to everyone. There's a lot of information out there on CTAHR, Scott Nelson, Arnold Hara. I learned a lot from. There's a lot of great CTAHR faculty as well. There are great pamphlets out there, and I do hope to produce more easy to find, easy to read documents to help all you folks. And if anyone's curious about a certain product or has an issue that they would like to discuss, I'm always here to do research and trial things for you. That's my job. I'm here to assist you so that you can keep being the best landscaper and plant manager possible.
There's one more question in there, Hannah. I don't know if you saw that from, I just copied it from me.
Yes.
It's about coconuts.
Cieloviopsis trunk rot. Any post-infection treatment other than excising it? Yes. There is several other fungicides that you can use. I would recommend cutting it out, and then you can use mancozeb and a variety of other fungicides to kind of treat that area. It is on a very slow moving pathogen. So if you can take out that infected zone and treat it with a systemic fungicide, that's what I would recommend. If you email me, I can send you specific recommendations. Oh, thank you, Joe. The Compendium of Turfgrass Diseases is a great tool and has most plant diseases from Hawaii. Thank you. Another question was, what about white and brown rot? That's a great question. Please send me a picture so I know what plant it's on, and I can help you out with that. There's several different rots out there. It could be Rhizoctonia, it could be Pythium. There's several different rot type fungi. Phytophthora, Fusarium. Any other questions?
While anybody's thinking of questions, so Hannah, why don't you explain the process for the RUP-CEUs for people?
Yes. So if you folks are here for the RUP-CEUs, Allison and myself will be sending out a survey after this call today. Please make sure to complete that survey. You need to complete that survey, and there'll be a few questions about the content today. Please take your best guess. I believe you need a quiz score of 70% or greater to receive credit. So it's 1 CEU. So please just follow that survey. We'll be emailing it to all of you. And after you fill it out, we'll have your information. and we'll send it in, and you should get the RUP CUs as well as the ISA arborist CUs.
And we can post this online, so we're going to post it, the program online to our MALP website. So we'll post that. I just put that in the chat. So malp.org. So it'll be on there for you to see if you want to look back. And then Hannah, if she's interested, she might be able to email you the slides too. Because they're great slides. They're great for pictures to be able to show all of our customers.
Thank you. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending. If you're interested, it would be really fun to keep having these webinars. Maybe next topic could be bacterial diseases or viral diseases, because those are both very important and very challenging because there aren't any viral chemicals you can spray. It's really just managing those aphids. So managing the insect vectors and using clean plant material and sanitation, but it is really important to know about it so that it doesn't spread and become a big issue. And thanks again, Allison. What's that?
I was saying somebody wants both of those talks, Hannah. So start working on those for us.
Well, thanks again, everyone. It's great to see you, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Again, please call or email me at any time. Email's faster. There is only 3 ornamental agents statewide, and you folks are a big industry, so we try our best to respond in a timely manner, but we do appreciate your patience. But we are here if you have any questions, and we do have limited plant testing and diagnostic services. So if you do have any question and you really want to know what's affecting your plant, just reach out to us because we're here to help with that.
If you want more ornamental agents, please contact CTAHR because they ask a whole lot of work for these 3 agents. So make sure if you think they're important, call their boss and let them know, because they're certainly helpful to us here on Maui.
Thank you, Allison.
Any other questions? It looks like everybody's pretty, unless anybody's signing off. Make sure I'm writing down your information for your CEUs just in case something happens and we don't have them, but we'll be sending that survey out soon. And thank you everybody for joining us today. It's good to see people from around the state, which makes these classes fun online. And if you have any questions, you can email us directly, or you can send information. Like I said, you can email Hannah directly. Her contact information is in there, and then I'll put the MALP email in there. And if you have any other ideas for classes in the future, let us know. And have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Allison, for organizing this.